Our next segment today is by xiii Daizan. She's been doing a State of Miseducation segment, and today we will be listening to the part 3 of her series on Captain Cook. So here she is, xiii Daizan, and her Captain Cook part 3, State of Miseducation.
Aloha mai kako, xiii Pua Okamele again with State of Miseducation, continuing in our series on James Cook, this time covering the events leading up to the Battle of Kealakekua and Cook's demise. Books like Hawaiian Journey by Joseph G. Mullins claim the reason for Cook's death stemmed from the theft of one of his ship's small boats, or cutters. If you'll remember, we already covered the vast amount of provisions traded, but mostly given to the British, that Na'ali'i were impatient for Cook to leave our territories, and that he left but returned only a week later. The reason being because storms and rough seas split his mast, leaving him urgently in need of repairs. And they were not welcomed as warmly as they were before. Indeed, Na'ali'i were not impressed with the fact that the mast had broken so soon, nor with Cook's, quote, awkward explanation of it. In addition to the waste and drain on resources by Cook and crew, since the first landing at Kauai the previous year, disease had spread and many had died. Na'ali'i attributed these deaths to the presence of the foreigners on our shores and had brought up the issue with Cook at his last visit. Unlike the previous visits, tensions were high this time and several altercations occurred very quickly, so quickly that 2 days into their third visit was the eve of the battle. On that day, the 13th of February, 1779, a pair of tongs and chisel was stolen. The perpetrator jumped overboard and escaped in a va'a alongside the ship. Some sailors, without waiting for orders, set off in pursuit, but their cutter could not keep pace. Ali'i Palea was on board the ship that day, and he promised he would have the tongs and chisel immediately returned. By the time the cutter made it to shore, Ali'i Palea had already made it to shore, had the items ready to return to the 4 officers, and they accepted them and were about to return to their ship until they noticed reinforcements, that is, in the form of 5 other sailors who were drawn to the commotion. You see, Cook had sent out a watering party earlier, except when the party got to the well, they found Na'ali'i already there. And Na'ali'i ordered away the maka'ainana, who the sailors charged with filling and carrying the casks for them. Unsure of what to do, they had gone to Cook, and he ordered the crew to fire full charges against any display of what he called insolence. As a result of this order, Na'ali'i at the well armed themselves, and at the moment, negotiations were taking place over the water accessibility. This time, Na'ali'i were much more aggressive in their trading, and stones were even hurled from the cliff sides to keep the sailors away from resources they weren't granted access to. So, these 5 reinforcement officers were part of the party who were waiting behind, apart from the negotiations. But the sight of these reinforcements emboldened the senior officer in the cutter. Now, it wasn't enough to simply return to the ship with the returned goods. No, this officer, Mr. Edgar, decided that retribution was due. He took it upon himself to seize the nearest va'a. Problem was, the va'a he approached was Ali'i Palea's va'a. Yes, the same Palea who pursued, recovered, and returned the goods. This was a mistake. After a warning by Ali'i Palea to keep away from his va'a, as the va'a, especially that of an ali'i, was much, much more valuable than the little cutter boat. After warning Mr. Edgar to keep away, Mr. Edgar persisted in a very rough manner. And so Ali'i Palea laid hold of the officer and, pinioning his arms behind, held him fast by the hair of his head. Remember, this period, 1779, this is the era of the ruling warrior chiefs. Na'ali'i were a warrior class who practiced the form of genetics to produce superior warriors. To say they were intimidating is an understatement. Kamehameha stood over 7 feet tall, and he was considered of average height for the Ali'i warrior class. So here is Ali'i Palea, holding Mr. Edgar by the hair to keep him from the va'a. Then, another sailor thought it was a good idea to strike Ali'i Palea over the head with an oar. Ali'i Palea immediately released Mr. Edgar, seized the oar, wrenched it out of the attacker's hand, and broke it in two before his face. By then, a crowd had gathered who advanced on the sailors in defense of their ali'i. The sailors were quickly driven back, but as they were either poor swimmers or totally unable to swim at all, they didn't make it far. Luckily for them, Ali'i Palea ordered the fighting to cease. The sailors were assisted to the cutter, and all parties disbanded. The sailors were reprimanded by Cook for many things: pursuing the va'a without orders, seizing the va'a without enough arms, leaving their station without orders. Last week, we described how the crew was declared mutinous, and Cook had a difficult time controlling his very undisciplined crew. The issue seems to have worsened over time. Later that day, Ali'i Palea went to the ship to meet with Cook. He was declared not blamable, but Ali'i Palea asked an interesting question. Will Cook, kill him for what had happened? The reply was no, but more interesting is the question, at least to me. See, Na'ali'i, including Palea, had been attempting to figure out who among the sailors were the warriors. Cook had been asked if he was a warrior, and he affirmed that he was. What's interesting to note is that the crew suspected that the theft, pursuit, and return of the tongs was all orchestrated by Ali'i Palea himself. Only Ali'i Palea knows the truth of that, but if it is so, what was the purpose? To test the speed of the cutter? To test the men? To pose that interesting question to Koke? We can only guess. I, for one, am curious as to what your thoughts are. Please reach out and share. This has been Casey Cherie, Pua Okamele, with State of Miseducation. Let's keep it real, Hawaii.
Mahalo nui, Casey. That was such an interesting segment. I always learn so much every time she has her State of Miseducation, and it's really demonstrative of where we are as people and how much our ike has been splayed out over so many people. We got to bring it all back together. So it's such an awesome segment. Mahalo nui to her.